So my plans for the summer were to go and play hoops and run around and be on my bike and stuff like that with my buddies. My dad had a different plan. He says, "Hey, son, I got you and your brother a job. So be ready. They're going to come pick you up tomorrow. And you are a bird boy." And I said, "Well, what's a bird boy?" "Oh, they'll tell you tomorrow."
Good Monday morning. Have you ever wondered how successful and happy people got their starts? Every success story begins somewhere, often more humbly than you'd expect. I'm Leilani Brown, host of Your First Job, the podcast. Today I'm chatting with Orlando Ashford, the Chief People Officer at Fanatics, and we're catching him just before Fanatics Fest, the company's inaugural major event that will bring over 150,000 fans to New York City. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. What was your first job out of college, Orlando?
Yeah, so my first job out of college. So a little context. So I've been fortunate. I had a number of internships. So I started interning in high school, and so I interned sophomore, junior, senior in high school, and then I had internships through college, including graduate school. So it did give me some context. But my first formal job out of college was as a consultant working for Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. And I was nudged into that, encouraged into that, and decided to do that for a few reasons. And one, great name, great sort of training ground. So they would take young consultants and send them up to what was called St. Charles, Illinois, and you'd go through all this training. And so you built these tools and learned these models and the like. And then as a consultant, you got exposed to multiple different companies, and you'd come in and you'd be in this industry or with this company. And I worked in Canada, worked on a project with Sears Canada. I worked on a project in Chicago. I worked on a project on the East Coast in the pharmaceutical space. And so I found consulting to be a really good development ground and an accelerator in terms of understanding business. So my objective or ambition coming out of college was to position myself. I wanted to be an expert and a guru on organizational dynamics, organizational leadership, and understanding what levers you can pull to have an influence and an impact on how companies perform. That was my objective. Now, what I was going to turn that into wasn't completely sure, but that was my objective. And so felt like consulting was a great place to get developed. One, because that's what you're doing. You're being paid to come in and advise companies on how they can install a system or perform better or be structured differently. And so learning that early on in my early to mid 20s with a reputable company like an Anderson Consulting felt like a really good place to start my career. And so that's how we did it.
Yeah, we are tracking the years pretty much the same. I won't call it out, but I remember at the time that being the most coveted, or working for a major consulting firm like an Anderson Consulting or some of the others was a highly coveted job. Did you have any anxieties or nerves going into that, or did you feel unnecessary pressure about keeping and staying in it? Because for some it was a 2-year rotation, and for others they sort of made a career to go from consultant to partner.
Yeah, look, as a person of color coming into these organizations, of course there was nerves, imposter syndrome. Do I fit in? Do I belong? And in consulting, there was the additional challenge because you traveled, but not just traveled, you lived with the people that you were working with on these projects. Mm-hmm. So like I said, we did a project in Toronto, Sears Canada, and so made some really good friends, but culturally they were very different than me. And it's one thing to go and work from 9 to 5 and put your work face on and then go home and be how you are naturally at home. But on these assignments, it was 24/7. We worked together 10, 11, 12, 14 hours. Then we'd go out, eat dinner and go socialize. And then you're in rooms, you're sharing apartments with some of these folks, and then you're back at work the next day. So it wasn't until I didn't get a chance to quote unquote be me until the weekend.
Right.
And so if how you show up at work is significantly different than how you show up in your personal life, and you have to live like that 5 days a week, 5.5 days a week, depending on the project, that's a lot. It's a lot. So I had to learn that. and so, some will, culturally swing. How do I fit in? What are the things that I do? How do I fit in a way that's still true and natural to me? But I also worked for a very conservative firm, and there were things that I bumped into um, as related to that. So how did I get around it? I just worked really hard.
Yeah.
Um, and you hear that you got to work twice as hard to get half as far. That's very true. I definitely didn't know how well I fit in, but what I could control is how hard I worked and how many hours I put in. So I was one of those consultants that just build and build and build and build and build. And I'd take the
Yeah.
assignment and I would bill and bill and bill and bill to the point where I remember my partner made me take vacation after about a year and a half. Like I hadn't taken any
Right.
time off.
Right.
And she literally said,
You were,
Orlando,
and you
go
were
ahead.
never on the beach, as they
No,
would say at the time. You weren't.
I would take any assignment. I just wanted to bill and bill and bill and bill. That's how I was going to differentiate myself. And my partner, literally our partner, she brought me in the office. She says, Orlando, you're going to kill yourself working like this. Go home.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be. If you're in this office in the next week, you're in trouble. I need you to
Yeah.
go home.
Yeah.
She sent me home, made me go home. So that left a mark. So just in terms of one, I guess I had accomplished my goal. I had developed a reputation for being willing to work like that to the point where she had to send me home. So I guess that's a good
Yeah.
thing. But as I've gotten older and reflect on that, there's pros and cons to that approach. And so I have that conversation with
Absolutely.
my own children now as they embark on the work world.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that you probably are intentional in how you build it into the workplace culture that you try to cultivate at Fanatics and at other places where you lead and govern and manage. That story really uncovered a couple of things. One, at least I heard a couple of elements. One, authenticity and the power and value of being yourself. The other is the pressure that people who are different, sometimes underrepresented or newcomers, Black and Brown people, women, first generation, feel to overcompensate as a strategy for overcoming imposter syndrome, or just quite frankly to be seen in a differentiated and
Right.
positive way. But
Right.
also it talks about balance and the need to take more breaks and build in a more effective way to kind of balance through it. So thank you for the honesty in that. How do you think organizations are changing in both respects? One, allowing people to show up fully or more fully at work, not completely. We don't want you to bring it all, but you can bring a lot more. How are they changing in terms of allowing for more inclusion, for more full expressions of a person's personality, and well as how are they changing to allow for the necessary balance that you
Yeah.
might find in a workplace?
Yeah. So I work in a company, we anchored around sports and media and culture and things like that. And my biggest stressor when I was taking this job was what to wear. Uh, because I grew up, I was suited and booted. So I
Your
wore
suit.
suit, I invested in the
I
suit thing.
know who you are. Yeah.
I, I spent a lot of time.
Didn't you have a suit company at one point? Didn't you get to
Yeah,
the point where you were like making companies?
yeah, I was real into it, but I had it down. I've done that for 20 some years,
Yes.
suits and ties and cufflinks and,
It's a
blah, blah,
uniform.
blah, blah. It was my uniform. And so you
Yeah.
come to this job and I'm like, so what do I wear? He says, wear what you want. My boss is like, yeah, I wear hoodies and J's to work. I go, J's to work? I don't know if I can do that because mentally that didn't feel like working. I had to adjust my attitude. He literally said, go
Yeah.
ask your kids what to wear. They'll show you what to wear. And so I had to figure out how to create my own version of sporty in a place where everyone's literally wearing hoodies and sneakers and things like that to work because that's the environment that we're in. So that's me
Yeah.
showing my age and having to sort of adjust. But it's getting
Yeah.
that balance. I made the comment to Michael Rubin, my boss. I said, Michael, you can walk into a high-end restaurant or hotel wearing a hoodie and J's and they think it's cool. If I walk into that same restaurant wearing a hoodie and J's,
Yeah.
they're going to tell me we have a dress code. You can't come in here.
Yeah.
So I have to still balance those things. I
Right.
have those conversations with my my two sons. I have two
Yeah.
boys. And so we have a lot of discussion about hair. I'm not contributing much because I don't have any anymore.
I was gonna say, what's your point of view of
Yeah,
hair
yeah. Mine
at
is
this
simple.
point?
Mine is simple. My contribution is very simple. But they talk about they have the high things and the squigglies, and then they do the rolls and they do the twists
Yes.
and all that stuff, which is great. Young people are able to express themselves. I grew up in a different generation where people pass judgment based on your hair. So when I was coming out of school, it was very low and tight and lined up and looked a certain way on purpose because I wanted to fit in and not have people
Hmm.
misinterpret me, right? Particularly being at a consulting company. I didn't feel like I could do all those things. So the world has
Yeah.
evolved where there's more of those freedom of expression to be who you are with your hair and with your clothing style and things like that. But I still think, and hopefully I'm more and more wrong, but I still think you do have to manage what's the impression that you want a person to have and what you want them to think about you before they get to know you, and how quickly can you get
Right.
them there.
Right.
So you need to be true to yourself, whatever that is. But you do also have to realize that what that first impression is may not be what you want them to think. It may not be the truth. And so how can you
Right.
quickly help them navigate from here to the truth about you? I think that's something that's still true. Right,
Yeah.
wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah. Okay. And I know that you were the author of two books, at least two. I don't know if there's a third one coming, so don't surprise you. Surprise me. We're breaking news here. The first one, Talentism, talked about workforce and technology and its impact. And my team and we've been doing a lot of research on sort of the intergenerational, multi-generational workforce post-COVID. Why can't we just get along? Some of that can be attributed to new learned habits. Some of it is sort of always been there. Um, but most certainly some of it, including social media, has had an impact as to how we see each other and relate to each other and where we're shortcutting and where we're not shortcutting. Do you have a point of view about this sort of post 2020 or post COVID world and what the multi generational workforce is at odds about? Why are we so oppositional versus being aligned?
Well, so I don't have a magic answer, but I have a couple thoughts that I can contribute. So one of the things that COVID did, it forced us to learn how to function with less direct connection. So we can exchange information, we can make decisions, we can buy and sell companies, we can make hiring decisions virtually.
Mhm,
And there was a
mhm.
period of time when you'd say that absolutely not. I can't buy that company until I fly in and sit in their office and stare at
Right.
that person for how many hours, or I
Hmm.
can't hire somebody until I've flown them here and they sit in my office and I assess them
Right.
for 45 minutes. We got over all that. We got over all that. But I don't think that technology is a complete replacement for some of the direct connection that we need and should have with people. I don't think it's a complete replacement for innovation and creativity and collaborative, like helping collaborative juices flow better when you're in one another's direct presence. And so I think we've gotten a little lazy around our true connection of people. I do a presentation and I talk about how we don't have the hard conversations with one another. We've gotten more surface because that's what Zoom or some of these other things allows us to do. I need to tell you something, but surface. I don't
Right.
get to the emotive part. I don't get to really know you and how do you really, really
Right.
feel about
Right.
certain topics or things. And so if you don't have that, then I don't think you get true connection, and that's something that's missing. And I think for those of us that are older and grew up with that, we figured out how to recreate it. And that so as the pandemic sort of softened and the rules softened, we went back to trying to recreate rooms and opportunities for that real connection. Others were functioning in this sort of techno kind of version of it, and they've stuck with that. And I think it hurts. I mean, companies have to be purposeful about we're doing it now. How many days do we want our people to come back to work? 1 day, 4
Right.
days, 5 days? No, I'd argue 5 days or 6 days is not the right answer, my opinion. But I know
Hmm.
0 days or 1 day, I don't think is enough is the
Right.
right answer either. I do think you
Right.
do need to have some type of connection. People need to be in each other's company and share, and not just the transactional part. It's the stuff around it, the context around it. When you're designing products for different types of people, the
Hmm.
context is important. Culturally, how do you make buying decisions? How do you use this product? How do you engage with your family? Well, you don't get to those conversations unless you have connection with people. And that's the power of
Yeah.
diversity. It doesn't do you any good to just have diverse widgets, but you use them like widgets. You
Yeah.
actually have to use people as people that are different. And you have to tap into that difference in order to get the big impact on your business or your team or your organization. So
Yeah.
um, that's my take.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I would add and ask a question. I think when it comes to the lens of diversity or the framework of diversity, we often talk about race and ethnic identifiers and gender identifiers. And, both of them are true and they are resonant with me as a Black woman and you as a Black man. But I also think age is the next diversity dimension when it comes to workplace and workforce. We are going to be working longer, and we need people to be working longer. Do you see any indicators, at least in your own experiences, a recent experience of the generations coming together in a more cohesive way? I mean, you've got sports fans of, of every of every identity. I mean,
Yeah,
if anything, you're a case study for
well,
inclusion writ
for
large.
sure. Well, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy this company. Fandom is a lifelong thing, and so
Yes.
from that that child that's born and you put him in the jersey and hat and the onesie of whatever the family's favorite team is when they're an infant, to that person that's in their 80s that finally has their team that they've been rooting for most of their lives finally wins a championship, and they're able to share that multi-generationally. That's what we do. We help capture that fandom, and work to enhance that in different ways through our different businesses. So, and in order to tap into that, you got to be able to tap into different perspectives. And so we work with a lot of young people. This is a place that people want to come and work for, and rightfully so, just because of what we do in the product. And so they're able to teach us, how do they think about and consume sports? How do they think about fandom? And then what
Yeah.
are some of the new and unique ways we can tap into that? That's one of the fun things about this place, and because no matter how old you are, the idea of I love this team or I love this player is something that's we can join around. And then figuring out how do we consume it is different. Like I grew up where when it was you were going to watch a game, the game was coming on network television at a certain time. We'd all go and sit down. We get the bag of chips, we get the soda, mom would make whatever she was making, and we'd sit down and watch the game. Well, that's not how young people consume the game. Like both my sons play sports,
Right.
and I'd be trying to sit down with them to watch the game. They're running around watching the snippets on their phone. And then I would
Right.
say, "Man, did you see that play? You missed it. You missed it." They go, "No, I didn't, Dad." And they'd be from the other room, playing back from on their phone. I say, "Oh,
Right.
okay, I got to adjust." So the days of sitting,
And
because I
they're
remember
watching it. Yeah.
they're watching it virtually. They're playing a game, they're doing this, and they're getting updates on the phone, so they don't miss any of the plays. Um, but it's just consumed differently than the way
Right.
I
I mean, think
consumed it.
about it. If we didn't even recognize the multi-screening, we wouldn't know how to multi-platform any of the things that you were hosting
Right, right,
or doing in that way and
right,
doing in that way.
right,
Well,
exactly.
I mean, I have to thank you for taking the time to talk to us right now because you are leading people and talent for Fanatics, and this weekend is Fanatics Fest, which
Hmm.
is the first but not the last for you. 150,000 or so people coming together. So, in that same way, how do you mobilize talent to put something together like that? And what do you look for when you're
I mean,
looking
look,
for talent?
one of the things that's fun about this place and working for a person like Michael Rubin, he thinks enormous, big picture thinker, and he applies that to every aspect of this business. And so that's sort of how this played out. If you're familiar with Comic-Con, so sort of the celebration of comics and sort of those characters and that sort of culture. And so Michael had an experience at Comic-Con, and he sort of said, "Gee, this is amazing. Look at how passionate these people are. Here's an example of fandom associated with this sort of slice. Well, we should have a Comic-Con of sports. Um, why isn't there one? Fanatics should do it." And it started with that. And then if you want to do something big, it starts with the big idea, and then you got to go out and get the talent. So we went out and found the person that had actually done Comic-Con to come do the Comic-Con of sports with us. And so he now works
Wow.
with us and is helping and assembled a wonderful team. And we're about to launch into Fanatics Fest tomorrow. And it is a celebration of sport like no other, with celebs, sports celebs, music celebs, media celebs. We've got leaders from the industries, from the leagues, teams, and all kinds of workshops and fun events, and it's amazing, all in one place over a 3-day period, and it's the first of many. So this hopefully is a phenomenon that will continue. We'll take this around the world and celebrate fandom
Yeah.
in a really cool and unique way.
Yeah. It's not enough to be a fan to work for Fanatics, or like sports to work for Fanatics. You have to have some other talents. What are some of the key attributes that you look for and that you tell your team to look for? Because you're not touching every person, but
Sure.
what are some of the elements that you think that make a person successful or a
Yeah.
successful applicant for Fanatics?
Yeah, I get this all the time, right? People say, "Oh, Orlando, I love sports. Can I come work at Fanatics?" And I'm like, well, based off of that, no. we, we don't sit around watching ESPN or talking to athletes all day. It's a company, and so it's a real job. So what are the skills that you have? Now there's sports around it, so that is what makes it fun. But this is a real
Yeah.
job. So it's a tech-based company, so there's a lot of technology. So that's here. So our websites, the fan app that we'll use to be a connection across our sports betting business is anchored off of an app. So there's a lot of technology and tech roles here. We have all the traditional, finance, marketing, HR, and the like. All those roles are here. We have to produce a lot of product. So there's, whether it's our collectibles or our commerce business that are producing tangible products. So we have all that infrastructure in place. But one of the threads that's just common, this place works really hard. People work really hard. They're very intense and passionate about what we're trying to do. So we work at a pretty fast pace. We get that energy from our founder, Michael Rubin, self-made. And so he's pretty hard charging. And so we
Yeah.
tend to attract other hard charging people. We like people that are intellectually curious. So we're trying to solve a problem. So what are the things I need to do in order to solve that problem? And then collaborating with those around to kind of get to the end outcome. This is not a place where it's just, I'm just going to tell you what to do and go do that. You need to have a point of view on how do I help solve this problem? And we love people that want to solve their problems that they're responsible for, but also want to help solve other problems that
Other
maybe
problem.
others are working with or that we haven't realized needed to be solved.
That's
Those
great.
intellectually curious people, because we're about trying to create relentlessly pursue the enhancement of the fan experience, supporting the passion of fans. So we're all fans. And so what
Yeah.
are things that we could be doing to capture that energy and help fans love their sports even more? And so when you put that lens on, there's all kinds of things you can think about. So you put those in the hopper, and there's things that we do that didn't exist 6 months or a year ago because somebody had a cool idea. We're like, yeah, that would be cool. We should do. I'll give you one example. MLB debut patches. So last year, literally in a meeting, wouldn't it be cool if we put a patch on every rookie in their very first game to acknowledge their first game in the big leagues? And then we took
That is
that patch
cool.
and put it on a
Mm.
trading card and then had the athlete sign it, and it would be the ultimate one of one. And it was like, that's a great idea. So guess what? That's what we did. So this past season, on day one, opening day, every rookie on their first game plays with this MLB debut patch. We ripped the patch off. We put it on the card. They sign it. I saw the box. Well, they had all of the debut patches for all the
Wow.
rookies in one box, and some ended up being worth a whole lot, and some weren't worth as much based on how that rookie performs. But how cool is that? So within minutes of that getting launched, well, guess who's calling? Some of the other leagues, like, man, that's a great idea. When are you going to do that for us?
Right.
That's
Right.
what's great. Yes, we're in business. We're also fans, and so you can connect those two energies
And
and
you're
come up with cool ideas.
innovating. Yeah. Yeah. And you're innovating in that. Orlando, I happen to know that there was a job that you had that doesn't make it to the bio or to the resume. And that is you being a bird boy. Would you please tell our listeners what a bird boy is and what you learned being a bird boy in New Jersey in the
Yes.
summers?
Yes. So my father walks in the house one day and he says, hey, this is in the summer. So the summer's getting ready to start. And so my plans for the summer were to go and play hoops and run around and be on my bike and stuff like that with my buddies. My dad had a different plan. He says, hey, son, I got you and your brother a job. So be ready. They're going to come pick you up tomorrow. And you are a bird boy. And I said, well, what's a bird boy? Oh, they'll tell you tomorrow. So anyway, long story short, I get picked up. My brother and I get picked up. It's like 4:35 in the morning. We drive out to this reserve. So imagine water, trees out in the middle of the nowhere. And what a bird boy does is I help facilitate the competition of retriever dogs. So people spend a lot of time, energy, money training these dogs, hunting dogs that you would take hunting to retrieve ducks or birds that you would shoot on a hunting trip. Well, some of these folks like to compete and show which dogs are better. And so they have these huge 3-4 day tournaments of competitions with these dogs. Well, as a bird boy, imagine, if you will, a stage with a judges, a dog, and the trainer. And 100 yards away out in the middle of a field is this little black boy named Orlando with a bag full of recently shot ducks, dead ducks. And I have a popper gun. And then 10 feet away is a tree with an orange X marked on the tree. And at the appropriate time, the judge would give me the signal. I would shoot the popper gun and then take a duck that's been properly folded in my hands, and I would throw it to land on that X 10 feet away. And then the trainer would take his dog, and send the dog out to go retrieve the duck, blowing his whistle, giving signals, and then the judges are recording and making a score. And not only would I would do this all day, because there'd be trial 1, and then trial 2 would be over water. So I'd be in like a boat or with wader boots in a pond, shooting the gun and throwing these ducks into the water. And the dog would jump into the water and retrieve the duck. And then we do like 3 or 4 of these. This is hundreds of dogs. So this would take all day. So it would be almost sun up to sundown with me and it's the same ducks. So I just have to tell you, by the end of the day, the ducks were kind of nasty because they'd been in the bag, then they've been in the water, and then in the bag again. It's a nasty job, but I hated this job. But I can tell you, when the summer came to an end and it was time to go back to school, who was ecstatic to be in school was me.
First in line, ready to go.
Where's the bus? In fact, I'll just walk. And I'm too far to walk. I'll walk. I can't wait anymore. I need to get to the bus. I need to get to school. I hated my job. My father called it a character building job, and which it worked, because I have never been afraid of hard work. Like, I've never done anything as crazy as that, and I've had to manage some crazy things over the years. But I refer to that. And see, this is what young people miss today. They don't get enough of these character building jobs.
I mean, that sounds pretty terrible, but lots of character in that.
A lot of character was
so. My penultimate question, obviously, you're allowed to be a fan of a particular team. I see behind you Patrick Ewing's jersey and Walt Clyde Frazier's jersey. Big Nick fan?
I'm a huge Nick fan.
Okay.
So this is one of the fun things here, right? So when I joined, and so you're meeting with people, and they always ask, so what's your team? What's your team? That's kind of part of our lingo. So what's your team? So I grew up in New Jersey, so I was rooting for the New York Giants for football and rooting for the New York Knicks. And so I'm in the in the age group where Patrick Ewing was the guy.
Yes.
And I remember rooting for him. And
That was
unfortunately,
the team.
Michael Jordan has a few of Patrick Ewing's rings, in my opinion. But I told the guys, I was a big Knicks fan, and I've always admired Patrick Ewing. And so, 2-3 weeks into the job, this shows up, and I have it on my wall. So it's a fun
That's
talk
amazing.
piece. Yeah.
That's amazing. Maybe next season. We're almost there.
Oh no, the Knicks are looking pretty good.
They are.
I got some cool. This is one of the other fun things. We're in the apparel business, so when the new cool Knicks jacket or jersey thing or something comes out, boom, I'll take one of those. I need something with Knicks on it,
and
I can wear it to work. And I
save one for me if Spike Lee doesn't grab them all. Orlando, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're busy. This is a busy time, but I cannot thank you enough. I think our listeners are going to really enjoy this conversation and hearing about your career and about your perspective and just hearing from you. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Happy to be helpful. And hopefully this blesses a few people and is helpful to them. So appreciate you thinking of me.
Your First Job is a production of Giant Steps, LLC, a company working at the intersection of strategy, culture, career, and education. I'm Leilani Brown, CEO and host of the show. Many thanks to our executive producer, Sam Osborne, our production team at Relics Corps, and to Maxwell Brown for composing and producing our show music. You can learn more about our company and the podcast by visiting giantstepsllc.com. Thank you for listening.